same graph model here, the wind speeds, and again, I'm showing you two different models for wind gusts, and I think this model does a pretty good job of what we could expect. And by 10 o'clock tonight, we're going to start to see winds gusting over hurricane force down toward Grand Chenier and also by Cameron. And then the core of the storm, that donut that we showed you, starts moving inland right around midnight, give or take an hour or two. Here we are at midnight tonight, and notice the gusts pushing 100, 125, 127. These are gusts, not sustained winds. So when we're talking about the main storm, we're talking about sustained winds. Gusts are usually 30% higher, and then as the storm moves inland, you have those sustained winds, but then you start having the storm interact with land, so you have frictional issues that produces those squalls that can be very, very damaging. And notice we see 80s, gusts to 80s across Crowley, Gaydon into Acadia, and portions of Vermilion Parish. Notice the gusts here, Kaplan at 93, Abbeville at 92, Baker Coastal City, and again, that's why that storm surge is going to be coming in. Gusts to Cimarron Point at about 1 a.m. at 90, and you see these gusts well in the 100-mile-an-hour range. Now, mind you, we always say it's one model projection, not an official forecast, so maybe these numbers are too hot, but this is what we have to prepare for. Too hot meaning too high, but these are certainly all possibilities, not at the exact time that we're showing you, but I will not be surprised if we see a few reported gusts if we get some robust weather stations to report this. Usually weather stations go down in 100-mile-an-hour winds or so. Not so much because the equipment fails, but power to the equipment fails, and the communication from the equipment to us fails as well. And again, you can see those gusts units. How about this? A gust to 98, certainly possible. Jennings 97, 100-mile-an-hour gusts. Again, this storm track is a little bit east of where the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. So this is a possibility, but this may go back a little bit farther to the west, but you get the spirit of things. You get from Lafayette on westward, infinitely worse. Lafayette on eastward, better, but still not out of the woods with those tropical rain bands that will be pushing on through as we head through the overnight and early morning hours. Still some gusts in the 90-mile-an-hour range showing up to Ritter, up through Alexandria at daybreak tomorrow. And then finally the system crosses I-49 up by Natchitoches. Hurricane gusts likely all the way up to the I-20 corridor. And then by tomorrow afternoon, winds beginning to die down. Will be in the 25 to 35 mile an hour range or less. So that's when things will be much quieter. So it's going to be a long night ahead. Again, a different model. This is a high-resolution rapid refresh model, but showing the same story with this big donut of everything in white is 100-mile-an-hour winds or better, pushing on through the area. Anything in purple is wind gusts to 75. So you see Crowley units. Still, the other model is going maybe up to 90, but this is going to 75. Add them up together, you get about 180 or 170 or so divided by 2, and then you have, well, 90 and 75, say 90 and 70 for sake of argument is 160 divided by 2, you got 80. So gust to 80 certainly possible with this system. And again, you can see how that continues to move to the north as we head through the early morning hours. So just backing it up, just for wind direction alone, we're going to see those winds coming around, and this is good because it shows the wind bar. Your wind direction initially is going to be mostly easterly, turning southeasterly as the storm gains latitude. So here our winds are beginning to turn southeasterly. So I always look at this because you start looking at, well, what if trees go down, that sort of thing. Well, your persistent wind is going to be out of the southeast, but you have a rain band that comes in. You'll have a wind coming in from the east on that rain band, then a wind coming in from the southwest. It's kind of like a convergence zone. So southerly winds getting more and more involved, especially when we have those tropical rain bands going on through. So your most vulnerable areas are areas that are facing south, and you want the big trees at your house to be on the north side because that's the direction they would tend to go down if we have these kind of winds that we're seeing here. And I fully expect these numbers to be pretty close to ground truth. So be ready. Rainfall-wise, again, if you missed it early, here's the European model going for generally 4 to 8 inches across most of Acadiana. But again, you can double any of these numbers in some hot spots. Take your locale, take this number down, and then let's look at the next number. And again, you can see at 10 to 15-inch rainfall to the west. Now, the Euro's not going to update until 1 o'clock in the morning, so we're going to be throwing that system out. But the graph model and the high-resolution rapid refresh model, they update every 3, 6, and in some cases, the predictive radar once an hour. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. But then we're also going to be looking at the observations as well. Rainfall, again, plan on 5 to 10 inches of rain for sure. Other areas up to 15. And again, what's going to happen is that we have all this rainfall. It's going to try to go into the conduits, such as the Vermilion, the Tesh, the Mermitaw, the Calcasieu, and we're going to have these strong southerly winds coming in, so the water's not going to be flowing down to the south. In fact, the storm surge is going to be pushing water up the Vermilion. It's going to be pushing water up the Mermitaw, and certainly the Calcasieu. In fact, the forecast of the Calcasieu River is to exceed the all-time record for the gauge over in Lake Charles. So that's why Lake Charles is going to have such a major problem with inundation and storm surge, and then on top of that, catastrophic. Can't underuse that word, catastrophic damage across southwest Louisiana. Again, wherever that donut that I showed you comes on in, the damage that we have not seen in our lifetimes anyway, going on record back into the 1800s. And again, the high-resolution rapid refresh model, we'll see how this comes in later on this evening. Anything in yellow corresponding to 8 inches. So you can see some spots you see hitting close to that 8 inches like Generette. And again, these are just printouts. So don't go by the exact number, go by the color code, and you can see widespread 8-inch rainfalls. You see a hot spot offshore here translating to 10-inch rain or better. And again, these are just models. What happens in the real world could be 2 different things. And this is the graphic that we've been using over the past couple of days, just to give you that timeline. That surge is going to come in. It's an unsurvivable surge per the wording from the National Hurricane Center. It's going to be catastrophic. The entire Acadiana coastline will say 10 to 20 feet. And it's going to be higher, obviously, over toward Cameron, but high water marks are going to be higher. So you have a surge, saying, when we talk about surge, we're not talking about the waves that are generated on that surge. And if you have a 10-foot surge, say, you can generate a 5-foot wave that's half the distance down to the ground. So a 20-foot surge, you can get, theoretically, up to a 10-foot wave. So with Hurricane Rita, there were some high water marks on some telephone poles that were left behind down toward Holly Beach that show high water marks above 20 feet, 23, 24 feet. I would say if there's anything left standing, we might see high water marks approaching 25 feet. So this is going to be worse than Rita, worse than Ike in many aspects. And again, flood watch in effect. We do have a tornado watch in effect, by the way, till 9 o'clock tonight. Those take the back seat because we just watched the tropical rain bands, because those are the main damage makers. And then the wind gusts for all of Acadiana, prepare for 40, 60, gusts 75 to 90 in squalls, better than 100 miles an hour, 100 mile an hour winds west of Lafayette. Isolated tornadoes also likely in this window right here that ends by midday tomorrow, and then widespread power outages, especially western and coastal portions of Acadiana, but even anywhere else in Acadiana, going down through St. Mary Parish as well. We're going to have power outages, there's no doubt about it, and power outages can last for days, and we full well know even in go back to 1985 Hurricane Danny, there were some folks that were out of power for 2 weeks. Some people with Hurricane Lily were out of power for a week to 2 weeks. So this is not unusual, so expect power outages and that for it to last for a while. That's why you gas up your car right now. Make a run for it right now. If you can, do it safely. Gas up everything. Get gas in a gas can. Use premium. That works best not only in cars, but also on your generator as well. That's me talking. And then that storm surge, it's going to last through beyond Friday afternoon. Once the water comes in, it takes probably somewhere between 10 and 14 days for that water to drain back out into the Gulf of Mexico. So lots going on here. Now, I just kind of posted something while you guys were talking about my house. You know, you put your cars in your garage. You want to get up away from the street as possible. You want to seal all your windows on your house. There used to be this old adage, crack a lead window on your home. It'll reduce the pressure. Now, you just want to keep wind out of your home. So windows shut, doors shut, garage doors shut, and by the way, the most vulnerable way for wind to get into your house, if you're going to be seeing these 100 mile an hour winds, is through the garage door. The garage door goes first. Once the garage door goes, that gets wind into the garage door, That allows for lift. If you have an attic access in your garage, that lift on the roof begins to get lighter and lighter, and then you're in a whole world of trouble. So what I do at my home is get the cars in the garage, get whatever cars up, right up to the garage if they're parked outside, and actually slowly move your car up against the garage door. If it's in the garage, this way it kind of reinforces the garage door as well. So that's a good way to play, because when the wind gets going, you hear that garage door banging around normally in just about everybody's home. And again, carports are another issue as well. They sometimes funnel the wind and are the first things to go in those high winds. So a lot going on, a lot of dynamics in place, and every system is a lesson producer for us. And coming up before everybody's power goes out, I'm going to talk a little bit about the storm pitfalls after the storm, where we see our most fatalities and most of the danger that happens after a storm.
Thanks, Hank. Rob, wanted to ask you, I'm monitoring the feed. We are broadcasting on air, but also on social media. One of the questions that came up when you were talking about the different models, and I actually thought it's something that I always wanted to ask you too, is what goes into the decision-making process? Which model do you broadcast? We see those spaghetti plots, and there's always a few that go one way, and a majority maybe the other way. What goes into that decision?
Well, that's kind of the bane of meteorologists. What model is doing well? Earlier this week, the European was doing a horrible job. So we have what's called these global deterministic models, then we have these higher resolution models. Let me back it up to the let's take a look at the graph model. This is the newest one we've had, and we're still evaluating it. But what we do, and what I do, I can't speak for other meteorologists, but what we do here at KETC is we take the model that best matches the track that the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. And that's the way we're going to play it. We want to stick with a consistent message from the National Hurricane Center. So I don't want to show you a model that, say, the Hurricane Center right now, and this is kind of pushing it a little bit. We do have models that are a little bit closer to the Hurricane Center forecast track, but notice when we were talking about the eye of the storm is a little bit more east of maybe that northwesterly track. So this model may actually verify, but what we try to do is pick the model that we think is the most likely going to represent where that center of storm is going to be and how the dynamics play around it. And now, in this day and age, these computer models are so much more sophisticated, but they vary. They have different physics packages, they have different chemistry packages in them, and the math packages are different, and they are so complex. And that's why when you get a degree in meteorology, you've got to take 5 semesters of math, 4 semesters of physics, 4 or 5 semesters of chemistry, and then you get into dynamic meteorology that kind of combines all of those physics and chemistry and math together. So you start understanding the atmosphere in 3 dimensions as a fluid dynamic, and 4th dimension being time. So it gives you a better idea on how to visualize that, and it also gives you a better idea on how you think it's going to play out. And this is really a simplified map of what we look at. A lot of times we're looking at upper level maps, we're looking at maps at 18,000 feet, we're looking at, I like 10,000 feet, which is 700 millibar level, then I look at the maps going all the way down to the surface and different parameters, whether it's humidity or water in the atmosphere. So it's always a challenge, and not one model is better than any other, okay? And it's an evaluation process that many folks don't give us credit. We spend hours trying to figure out which model best represents what's going on right now. And sometimes midway through the storm, we might switch over to another model, but the graph model's been very good. And by the way, you know, there's always this talk about the European model versus the American GFS model. Well, the European model has been slipping a little bit. I don't know if because they've changed their physics package or math package, or how the computational techniques are done, or how the model initializes. But overall, in this storm and also with Marco, the GFS has performed better than the European model. But the European model was going for a deeper storm with Laura, whereas the GFS wasn't as deep. So you evaluate both, and then you kind of come up with a blend on what you're going to forecast-wise. And that final graphic, the impact graphic that we show you here, is a culmination of all those graphics that we put together. And we said forecasts are based on the National Hurricane Center, National Weather Service data, and all weighted model guidance. That means we've been spending hours looking over the models, and large impact changes can and will occur depending on any changes in the storm.
All right, well, thanks for letting us get into your head a little bit.
Anytime.
The way you do things, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. Well, let's get a check of the conditions here in Lafayette. I know we've had our crews everywhere, from Berlin Parish out to Lake Charles, even Texas, but we also have a crew in Lafayette right now.
We sure do. Our Andrew Clay is here. He's standing by right behind the KCC TV3 studio, actually. We put him outside, stay away from sports, and put him outside to do some storm coverage today. He talked to DOTD officials about efforts before, during, and after the storm. Andrew.
We are out here with Deidre. Thanks, Marcel and Jim. Deidre, we're feeling the wind pick up right now. I know there's a lot of drivers on the road tonight. What are you telling drivers right now?
Well, one of the biggest messages that we want to get across to drivers is we know that some owners are just now able to evacuate, and maybe there will be some even later tonight on the road. So one of our biggest things is we know that there could be some impacts to I-10 due to the severe weather, Hurricane Laura. So we actually are encouraging people to utilize some of our northern hurricane evacuation routes, and of course that includes I-49, US 61, I-55, as a lot of people are trying to reach Interstate 20. And so that's one of our biggest things that we're trying to encourage people. But also we know that if they have to get on the road, if someone just has to get on the road, especially to evacuate, we understand that. But we ask them, of course, to plan accordingly. And there are tools that they can use to do that DOT has. One is 511la.org. And basically it's our travel information system where they can look to see what roads are impacted, whether it's due to debris or flood waters, things of that nature, to help plan a safe trip for motorists.
So you would like to see motorists moving more north, maybe instead of east on I-10. What are you most concerned about waterways and bridges maybe being shut down later tonight or tomorrow? What's your biggest concern there?
Well, one of the things that we're looking for, of course, we have our operations team, and we've been working around the clock just monitoring the weather, but of course with storms like this, things change rapidly. So of course right now we're looking at a lot of our coastal parishes. Here in the Acadiana region, of course, we've got St. Mary Parish, Vermilion Parish, Lower St. Martin Parish, a lot of those lower lying areas that we're looking at to make sure, because we are seeing, you know, what the impact could be as far as the storm surges. So right now we do have a lot of our crews on standby, and they are ready. We've been preparing for this type of emergency event. To be honest with you, we prepare all year long. We don't wait until it just happens. So we're going to wait until it's safe enough for our crews to go out there. But until then, we're going to monitor the roadways. And if there is flood water on the roadway, we do encourage people not to drive around it, because you don't know what is underneath that flood water. The road could be washed out or anything of that nature. So if it is flooded, choose a different path.
Is there a point at which you would prefer drivers stay off the road tonight?
Even right now, even with the weather it is right now, as you can feel, the wind is picking up greatly. So if you don't have to go out, just stay at home. But we do understand that everyone has different situations. So if you do have to go out, again, plan your trip accordingly. Look at 511la.org to see what or if any impacts are to the roadways. Make sure that you give yourself enough time to get to where you're going. And remember, we do have posted speed limits, but remember, those speed limits are there for favorable weather conditions. So with the type of weather that we're seeing right now and the type of weather that is to come, it's good that you reduce your speed, especially with the type of wind gusts that we're anticipating with this storm.
Yeah, you guys are encouraging drivers to make smart decisions in this. This is also something we talked about off camera a little bit. This is a real test for infrastructure in the area. Can you kind of expel on that and talk a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things that you and I were just discussing is like these types of storms. They're considered maybe 100-year type storms. Sometimes you don't see these types of storms very often, but we're starting to see a lot of these types of storms, severe weather, heavy rains. We're seeing them a lot frequently. So with that, of course, comes with how does our infrastructure hold up to that? And that goes back to our operations team, our emergency response team, planning year-round. We want to make sure that our infrastructure is in the best condition possible to be able to withstand a lot of these type of storms that we're seeing now, whether it's a hurricane or snow and ice storm. We want to make sure that we're addressing drainage where it needs to be, especially in some of those areas where you could see some possible flooding in some of our lower lying areas. So we're addressing drainage, making sure roadways are being rebuilt, things of that nature.
We heard some people saying earlier that they were they waited till some of the first rush got out. But I would assume there was no more waiting. It's time to leave.
Well, if there are those who are just now able to leave, we do encourage them, if possible, if you're traveling I-10, if there's a possibility for them to take some of those northern evacuation routes, we do highly encourage that, because again, with the impacts that are going to come by Hurricane Laura, there could be some impacts to I-10. So if they can take I-49 north, if they can take US 61 north, I-55 north, things of that nature, we do encourage them to take those routes.
Time to get to know your neighbors in Alexandria. Chief Teacher Drew Yet from DOTD, appreciate you coming on. We'll send it back to Jim Marcel.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Andrew. Some information there from DOTD. You know, we've talked about people who are getting out of the way, who have evacuated or in the process of. There's so many people heading for safety, but others who are actually staying put.
That's right, and as long as our crews, as it's safe to do so, they'll continue to broadcast live from the field, including Chris Holton. He joins us live from Lake Charles, where we expect it to be a very different place in just a few hours. Hey, Chris.
Mila.
All right, I guess we're having some issues there. Chris was turning his microphone on. It's
Is
back
it
on.
on?
Hey, Chris, can you hear us?
Check. I'm waiting. All right, I get confirmation in my ear that y'all can hear us. That's the beauty of live TV right here. But as I was saying, that this is such a common sight here in Lake Charles right now. We're at one of the Walmart neighborhood gas stations, and gas pumps across town are completely wrapped up, cellophane. They made sure that even the handles, you can't pull that out. Of course, with the wind, they're worried about that whipping out and possibly ripping. And I want you to take a look over this way. In front of the store, it's really interesting because instead of using plywood, they have compressed cardboard boxes blocking the front entrance of the store, protecting those glass doors. That's a sight that I haven't seen here in Lake Charles just yet, but we'll spin around. And over here at the plumbing warehouse, they went hardcore. They have plywood all the way up, and they do have, it looks like, some duct tape on some of the upper windows, the glass windows up top. But, you know, we're lucky here in Lake Charles for the most part that before getting here, we did fill up. But whenever we saw an open gas station just about 2-3 blocks down the road, we decided to fill up our car one more time. It never hurts to make sure you're topped off, especially when covering storms. And we also took our sat Rav, and this vehicle, it's really cool because we do have power outlets in the back. So should our hotel lose power, we can actually jump in the car, power up, we can charge our batteries, we can charge our live equipment, we can charge our cell phones. So it's a great thing that we have this vehicle here in Lake Charles as well, and we're actually able to get this thing into one of the parking garages as well. So we're staying over at the LaBerge Hotel here in Lake Charles, and we're going to get this vehicle up into the parking garage, high up. I know there's a concern about storm surge. So many people have been reaching out to us on social media, but we'll make sure that we stay safe. And we're going to hop back in the car in a little bit. We're going to drive back over towards the interstate, and we want to check it out, see if we see any more people evacuating, check out the interstate system here in Lake Charles. For now, live in Lake Charles, Chris Welty, KTC TV3.
All right, Chris, along with photojournalist Blake Blanchard out there, you guys stay safe. Now, we do want to let you know that if you are out of town or if you lose power, you have to have your devices all powered up and your batteries ready to go, because you can download the KATC app and have the latest information on Hurricane Laura right there. We'll be broadcasting not only on air as long as we can, but also on our social media pages and our apps. You can also get access to this wall-to-wall coverage on your smart TVs. Just search KATC in the App Store, and throughout this coverage will also be broadcasting on 960 AM. Right now we want to head back over to the Weather Lab. Chief Meteorologist Rob Brillo standing by with some breaking news when it comes to Hurricane Laura. Rob.
Yeah, just a little bit of a breaking news. I just took a look at the Hurricane Hunter that is flying into this storm, and first off, one thing that we're watching, and I mentioned this in my last broadcast, it almost looks like this is more of a north-northwesterly movement. This is, we're starting out at 6, let's see when this starts out. Yeah, it's a 6-hour loop here. Over the last 6 hours, if you notice with the latitude and longitude lines, if you're moving northwest, you're going to be kind of going across the diagonal on these boxes, and we see not quite that. It's moving more north-northwest, so maybe a little bit of a wobble. Again, you have this cyclosoidal motion. These storms are like tops that are spinning on a table, so maybe just we're on one of those northward jogs, and then it moves back to the northwest again toward western Cameron Parish. But Cameron Parish, what a huge parish, and if this storm hits closer to eastern Cameron, we're going to have a lot more weather here locally, and then we covered that a little bit earlier. But as the storm has been getting closer in, Bradley, just go ahead and kick, I forgot to load up the show, just kick me over to the next graphic. Hurricane hunters are in here right now, and it just passed through the eye area and found, kick it over to the next one because we have the 6 o'clock report here. Not that one, go one more. That was, I was just playing with, there we go. We had pressure at 947 millibars. Well, the hurricane hunter just picked up estimated extrapolated pressure at 937. So that would translate to probably an increase maybe up to 155. So this is getting very close to a Category 5 storm. And again, it's already worst case scenario for southwest Louisiana, historically speaking, and adding more fuel to the fire right here. We're going to get updated track position in about 15-20 minutes or so. The 7 o'clock usually comes in before 7, but the National Hurricane Center is evaluating that recon data. They're trying to verify if these extrapolated pressures are right, but I saw 939, 938, 937 at the 7, then back to 939. So that's lower than this. So we're going to see a change in the sustained winds, more than likely, and at least 150 to 155. We do have a live shot, I'm being told, of Galveston Beach here, and the area you're looking at the piers. This is courtesy of our ABC affiliate, KTRK in Houston, and you can see the water lapping up against the shoreline here as we look down toward Galveston, and I'm thinking, is this the seawall here? It's hard to tell. Yeah, there's a seawall there, but you see the water beginning to lap up, and a lot of folks there just out of curiosity looking. But fortunately, this area down in Galveston is not going to see conditions anywhere near what they're going to see over toward Beaumont, Port Arthur, Orange, Texas. But here's a live look in the overcast clouds out there, and I got to get in touch with some of my folks I know that are setting up cameras. We're going to have a lot more visuals coming your way, we hope, as we go down the road. But once again, this is a very intense hurricane, and hurricane hunters finding pressure 10 millibars lower. So we are still in the process of a rapid intensification cycle, and you do not want to see this when you're roughly 5 or 6 hours away from landfall, because this storm will deepen. If the pressure drops, the winds will begin to catch up, if not already catching up. The hurricane hunters found 150 mile an hour winds and lower levels perhaps in this storm. So we're going to see this upgraded to 150 or 155 coming up on the 7 o'clock bulletin. I'd be willing to wager that with that kind of pressure drop. So on the verge of a Category 5 storm here, just hours before landfall. Guys?
It's tough to hear, to say the very least, Rob. I saw your reaction when you got the information in the weather lab. I saw your face change and knew it was something that was not going to be what we wanted to hear, but what we have to hear so that we can stay informed on the developments with Laura. So thank you for that update, Rob. Possible Cat 5 at landfall, Jim.
Yeah, unreal just to hear that. And that goes back to just how we all woke up today with that advisory from the National Hurricane Center, that unsurvivable storm surge, a warning that, we talked to Rob about, that's something that he just doesn't really hear very often either. But again, everybody, we have a little bit of a window of opportunity. Landfall after midnight, around 1:40. Rob, was that the last check for landfall?
Landfall is going to be somewhere around, we're thinking it's going to be close to about anywhere between 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so here we are, 6:30. There is still time. If you're watching us right now and you have not gotten out, now is the time to do so.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, well, moving on, Rob, we're going to give you a quick break. We have Jeff Davis, Parish PIO with the Sheriff's Office, Chris Ivy joining us. Thank you so much for being with us right now. Tell us, how have things been? Are deputies assisting ahead of the storm at this point, or are things pretty clear there now?
It's clouding up. The winds are picking up a little bit, but they're not at the dangerous stage yet. We're still responding and patrolling the area, handling calls. When the winds get over 35 miles an hour, we'll call all the patrolmen in, and they'll be stationed in some locations where they'll be safe until the storm passes.
What are some of the things you are seeing as they're still out there responding and patrolling the area?
There's a lot of people have changed their minds, I guess, and they're starting to pack up and head out, evacuate, but there still seems to be a lot of people that have stayed behind and planning on riding out the storm.
Riding out the storm. Well, it's good to hear that some people are at least doing what's necessary to get out of harm's way. As the night continues and things intensify, what are you telling those who are staying put in Jeff Davis Parish?
Just to let them know that there won't be any emergency services to respond, that once the wind gets up over 40 miles an hour, it's too dangerous for our people to come out to try to get to them. So if they're staying, they need to get inside, secure structure, and stay there until the storm passes. Once it passes, tomorrow morning in daylight, and we can safely get out, we'll have patrol start going around the area. And I'm sure the first things they'll have to do is, work around down trees, power lines, to get the roadways open so that they can respond to calls.
Is 911 the best option for people who may need some help tomorrow?
Yes, of course. We actually moved our 911 operators into our new jail because it's rated for 140 mile an hour wind. And so they've been moved to that location, and they'll be monitoring the phones throughout the night for 911 and our regular calls to the sheriff's office.
The big takeaways from Jeff Davis Parish right now: response and patrols continuing at this point, but they will slow down once winds pick up. Best option, if you're staying there, to call 911 for emergency response tomorrow. Things are safe with 911. They've been moved to the parish jail that is ready to take on at least 140 mile an hour winds. Chris Ivy with the Jeff Davis Parish Sheriff's Office, thank you so much for joining us now. We'll be keeping in touch with you throughout the night, into tomorrow, and the days to come.
Sure, thank you.
You all take care. You as well. Bye-bye.
And Marcel, the impacts of Hurricane Laura expected to be felt not only in Louisiana, but Texas as well. Let's get a check of the conditions now. Correspondent Camilla Bernal is joining us from Beaumont tonight.
A dire warning
If you have the chance to evacuate now, please do so.
amid a dire forecast.
The hurricane is going to be quite severe, very powerful winds with a strong impact.
Hurricane Laura is intensifying in the Gulf of Mexico, likely to make landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border as a major Category 4 storm overnight. Gulf Coast residents are bracing for heavy rain, high winds, and tornadoes.
We wish for the best, but prepare for the worst.
But what has officials most concerned is the potential for a storm surge of up to 20 feet.
Understand, we're talking about unsurvivable storm surge.
The storm's power, coupled with low-lying geography, could lead to a devastating impact.
There is no way to be certain that if you live through Rita and that you're hunkering down today in an area that there was an evacuation notice, that you will survive.
State and federal resources are mobilizing throughout the region.
For the first time in many years, we have activated the entire National Guard.
This as the Gulf Coast braces for the worst.
There are going to be neighborhoods, there's going to be places, whether it be rural or in a town, that are going to be unrecognizable.
In Beaumont, I'm Camila Bernal reporting.
Well, a little closer here at home, Iberia Parish officials are asking residents to consider a voluntary evacuation in the next little while that you have to possibly get out. Parish President Larry Richard had an emergency news conference earlier where he encouraged anyone living south of Highway 90 or south of Highway 14 to evacuate now. He says the parish is prepared despite how unpredictable this storm has been.
So we very well ready, I think, for whatever's going to happen to Iberia Parish. But listen, this is something that's unpredictable, so we don't know where this hurricane is going to hit. It's forecast to hit around Cameron, but you don't really know exactly what's going to happen because it's not here yet. But we try to prepare for the unknown, and that's where we're at right now in Iberia Parish.
And Richard has also put in place a mandatory evacuation order in the town of Delcombe. We talked to the mayor there in Delcombe as well earlier today, saying this is not the first rodeo, but still they do want to get everybody out who does need to be out. And a curfew for Delcombe will also be taking effect tonight at 8 o'clock, so just over an hour to go before that curfew takes effect. It'll last through 5 a.m. tomorrow.
And Governor Edwards, of course, addressing search and rescue efforts and response to the storm. That will be the search and rescue that will be underway right after Laura has moved in. The governor said state organizations are prepared with equipment and vehicles along with resources coming in from other states.
We do believe that there will be extensive search and rescue following this storm. And that's why we're asking people to depopulate the area, evacuate, to minimize the number of people that we have to then rescue from very dangerous conditions. But we do anticipate that search and rescue will be forthcoming. As soon as it's safe to do so, you should know that with the National Guard, Wildlife and Fisheries, the Fire Marshal's Office, and assistance we're getting from around the country with urban search and rescue, we will have a very robust effort that will start as quickly as we are able to do that.
Meanwhile, in Texas, the governor there warning that time is running out if you want to evacuate.
We anticipate the onset of the tropical storm force winds to hit Texas around 7 p.m. tonight, and then landfall of Laura should occur around 1 a.m. tonight, and people in that area will be dealing with the ravages of that storm for about a few more hours, but we do anticipate the storm being out of Texas by tomorrow night. Beginning about 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, we will begin the process of going in and going through rescues. It's important for people to know that from about 7 p.m. tonight until about 9 a.m. in the morning, it will be a little bit of a lockdown time period for the ability of rescuers and aiders to get in and to provide support for anybody in the local regions. And so we urge everybody who may be in harm's way to take these few last hours to get out of harm's way. And it may only be a day or two that you are required to be out of harm's way. But because of the power of this storm, if you are unable or do not get out of harm's way, the reality is for almost a 24-hour time period, there will be no ability for rescuers or aiders to get in and assist you in any way.
The impacts of Hurricane Laura, again, Louisiana and Texas. And Marcel, we have more breaking news when it comes to this.
Yeah, we just heard Rob say breaking news, so we're going to head over to him. Rob, what's the latest?
Well, yeah, we just got the 7 o'clock bulletin in, and Danny and Risha are there taking that watch, so that's pretty cool. That's I'm on the green screen there, so that's how we show you the weather, and it gives you the clarity. Again, the storm moving northward. We told you we saw Hurricane Hunter pressure data as low as 937. Well, National Hurricane Center down at 940, and more importantly, here we go. Winds are at 150, sustained winds at 150. That makes it just 6 miles an hour shy of a Category 5 storm. So a devastating hurricane, Category 4 storm, expected to make landfall at the same intensity, maybe closer to 155. Now again, we're not going to get a new forecast track. Are they saying anything in the bulletin there, Bradley? So additional strengthening could be possible before landfall, and landfall is going to be roughly about midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Then it's going to start to weaken, but devastating conditions on the way, as we've been talking about, and the storm surge is going to be just absolutely horrendous with this system. Catastrophic storm surge on the way, and what we've been saying again, I think this forecast track on this graph model looks very representative of what's going to be happening later on tonight. This model bringing us to landfall right around midnight, give or take. Again, when the outer eye wall, the northern part of the eye wall gets on the coast, that's officially when the storm makes landfall. So that'll be coming up later on tonight, and we'll be watching those tropical rain bands coming through us. So again, we talked about the lower impacts. Just want to bring you up to date on the radar imagery here, and we'll get to that in just a bit. We should show you first off the water vapor imagery, and this is what's guiding this on its trek right now. It's upper level low. This is the same feature kind of that interrupted Marco, but it backed off to the north and west. So we have that there. We have a high pressure ridge over the southeast United States, so it's finding the path of least resistance. These are winds at 500 millibars, which is roughly 18,000 feet, and you can see the upper level part of the storm maybe a little bit tilted here, but these wind particles may not be catching up with the center of the storm, but we see it quite clearly on the radar this evening. Again, here is our donut, that eye wall that likely has red going all the way around it, but again, the radars can't see through all this rain coming from the Houston Doppler, from the Lake Charles Doppler. Any Doppler is not getting it. Wish we had a Doppler somewhere down here so we could see it this way, but those outer rain bands now beginning to work their way onto coastal Louisiana, and you can see how things have been rolling, mainly more north-northwest than northwest, but that last official bulletin had it still going northwest. Am I wrong on that, Bradley? Just want to make sure, make sure that we're right on that. But it's moving, it looks like, a little bit more north of northwest. So again, it doesn't take a scientist to tell you that this thing is heading for Cameron Parish. Where it hits in the parish, yet to be determined. But everybody in Acadiana has to be ready for these tropical rain bands that are coming in and ranging into coastal St. Mary Parish along the coast here. I noticed the winds are beginning to pick up, and we'll take a check next time we get off the air. I'll take a look at all these readings along the coastline, but they're already starting to come up to tropical storm strength in this outer rain band. That outer rain band is gaining latitude. It's working its way through the coastal parishes, so it'll be reaching Lafayette. Here we are pushing 7 o'clock, probably about 8:30 or 9 o'clock this evening. So you can see that a little bit more clearly. A couple of more isolated cells, mainly across northern portions of Acadiana. But here comes the rain, and here comes the wind. It's going to be coming in gradually as the night wears on. Those winds will begin to slowly amp up, coming to a crescendo, starting around midnight and then staying amped up through the night, and then beginning to die down after daybreak tomorrow morning. But between midnight and about 7 a.m., it is going to be a very rough go, not only for our friends in southwest Louisiana, where it's going to be devastating, but here in Acadiana, we are going to have hurricane conditions probably on par with what we saw. The last biggest hurricane that came through here was Gustav in 08. The last biggest hurricane that produced a storm surge along the coast was Ike, both in 08, and they were, by the way, 10 days apart. And then Hurricane Rita. This is going to be the storm of in the history books for southwest Louisiana, surpassing the damage by Aubrey back in 57. Honestly, we have a lot more built up than we did in 57 across southwest Louisiana. And Rita kind of set the new benchmark for that storm surge. This one is going to up that benchmark to another level with incredible storm surge, as we indicated, 15 to 20 feet on the Cameron coastline. And just for reference, Holly Beach, I went down to Holly Beach about a month after Hurricane Rita, and there are a few holes in the sand, but that was all the camps that were down there on the beach, and within stone's throw of the beach, within a block or two of the beach, everything was quite honest. And unfortunately, that's probably gasoline on top of your vehicle.
Maybe a tough few hours, tough days, weeks, months ahead for sure. Rob, it's 6:50 right now. Are you expecting another updated 7, or is that?
That was the 7 o'clock bulletin. We'll probably get kind of close to the top of the hour. New fixes on the center of the storm, as we're in radar range, but we probably won't get an intensity update until 10 o'clock tonight, unless the National Hurricane Center is seeing, oh, you know what, we can't wait till 10 o'clock, let's up this to 155 or a Cat 5 storm. So we'll be watching for that throughout the night. We've got the printer just printing it automatically. We just step off the screen, grab it there.
Yeah. And I see Bradley is standing by too. I think he has something to add.
I'm not sure if the last bulletin was, but here it's now moving northwest.
Northwest. Okay, yeah. Let me just get into that. I didn't point that out. Okay, that kind of is pretty much in line with what we've been saying. It's going to northwest, northwest, and if anything, it's going to stay on that track, or maybe even go a little bit more northward. So I think we might be seeing a little bit more of an eastward landfall than what this forecast track is indicating. So I don't think this track has changed, no, because they have this pretty much going in right by extreme western Cameron Parish. So maybe more towards central Cameron, but that means the Eyewall is going to be more involved with not only Jeff Davis Parish is going to see higher winds, but those higher winds are going to expand for the rest of us as well. So coming up in about 2 or 3 hours, we're going to have new suites of models, but I'm going to start digging up some of the hourly high-resolution rapid refresh runs. I do have wind forecast products on that, and we'll see if that model is keeping up with the data that we're seeing right now. But mind you, it is very difficult to see the data that we just posted here in a computer model and then get it to crunch. It usually takes a few hour process, but we'll talk more about that in the updates to come. But look out, it's coming, and it's going to come in with one of the biggest wallops that the Louisiana coastline has seen in a very, very long time. And you know, I've been doing weather here for 32 years. This is going to be in the top storms of, I mean, Katrina was obviously bad, but just speaking about wind dynamics and storm surge alone and the intensity of this storm at this point so close to the coast, this is going to be the top storm that Louisiana has seen in 40, 50, 60 years, maybe even more than that, going beyond Hurricane Audrey, maybe on par with a 1940 hurricane. But again, you get back before before the 70s, for that matter, we didn't have satellite, we didn't observe as well. So the records are a little bit sketchier. But in modern times, late 20th century, 21st century, this is going to be the storm. The way it's looking up right
so,
now.
before we move on, we see north-northwest at 15 miles per hour. Is that a quick-moving storm?
It's moving pretty smartly, and at this point we want it to move as fast as possible. But when it entered the Gulf of Mexico, it was moving about 20. But all along, when it's been going through this rapid intensification cycle through the overnight and during the day, it's been running right around 15 miles an hour. So that's a good clip. That means it's going to come in and go out at a pretty good clip. That is good, because you don't want to be subject to 20 or 30 inches of rain. You're going to get your 5 to 15 guaranteed. But it's going to be in and out pretty quickly. And again, that time frame is going to be primarily between, for populated areas that are evacuating, the populated areas are going to see the big conditions probably between midnight and 6 a.m.
Well, if there's a good thing, it's the fact that it's moving quickly. We'll take whatever good news we can get at this point.
Right now. That's what we got for you.
Thank you, Rob.
We'll let you go take a look at more of that data. And a reminder to everybody, with power outages, a real possibility tonight. Make sure your phones, your devices are all charged right now. And download the KHTC app. We'll be broadcasting on air as long as we can. And we're streaming this broadcast over to our devices, over to our social media pages, your smart TVs as well. But again, with power outages, real possibility. It's your mobile devices that you're probably going to be dependent on tonight and into tomorrow morning. And throughout our full wall-to-wall coverage, you can also listen to KHTC on the radio right now on Talk Radio 960 AM. They'll be streaming our coverage live. We'll be here all night and into tomorrow as Hurricane Laura continues to make its way to Louisiana and Acadiana.
We keep telling you where you can find us because we want to make sure that when things change, you know where to go so you can stay informed. We keep saying it over and over and over again. We want to make sure as people are joining us and wrapping up their evenings and just getting home, you're seeing us right now on KETC, you're watching us on television, majority of you, and on our social media pages as well. We just want to make sure that you know where to go when you need this information as this night continues, because as we keep hearing, things are changing minute by minute and not for the better at this point. We just want to make sure that you know we are here, you know where to find us to get the information you need. Moving on now, preparations for Laura were ramped up in lower parts of Acadia Parish this morning. From Highway 13 to Lions Point, residents like the Myers, who had chosen not to board up their windows yesterday, changed their minds as Laura strengthened and did just that. Preparations continued with families in Morse and Esterwood. A number of people telling us hurricanes are scary enough, but Laura hitting at night, that definitely turns up the anxiety.
That's the only real thought that I have that has me nervous. It's going to come through at night. And you can't see nothing when that happens. So you just hope for the best.
It sure does. It makes me really nervous. I'm not looking forward to it at all, but I hope that it's not too bad, you know, and I hope that everybody stays safe.
Let's head out live now, take a look at Lake Charles. We are expecting to be the epicenter of the storm. That camera mounted on the Calcasieu, the bridge there, Calcasieu Parish, already rattling through the winds.
It surely is. That bridge, for many people, if you don't like bridges, and that one alone is scary enough for drivers on a nice day.
Yeah.
Better yet, as Laura approaches. So there's the view there. Reporter Chris Welty is in Lake Charles and will be, as he and our crew and so many others ride out Laura in that area. He's joining us live with more. Chris.
Hey guys, we're at I-10 and US 171 here in Lake Charles, and for the most part, there's really no traffic on the road, so that's definitely some good news that people are starting to either hunker down or they're already hitting the road to evacuate out of Lake Charles. Now, we're going to step out of frame and just give you a better shot. Now, as we were getting to this live shot location, you might be able to see that there's an 18-wheeler that's sort of off to the side of I-10 here. It looks like it crashed into a ditch when we were pulling up. They did have fire crews out there, but it appears that everyone was okay in that crash. It's unclear, though, if that 18-wheeler veered off the road because of any type of wind gust or anything like that. The winds are starting to slowly pick up. We have seen some people on the interstate pulling their trailers, and actually there's a pickup truck driving right now, loaded down with the trailer. And we did see some RVs leading down the interstate as well. And also, I thought it was really interesting noticing some of the car dealerships, there's so many car dealerships off of I-10 here in Lake Charles and the 210 area as well. And it looks like they pushed a lot of the vehicles closer together, almost touching that way. They won't be blowing around, and they did move some of those vehicles to higher ground. Now, here in Lake Charles, of course, we're expecting devastating storm surge and catastrophic damage from Hurricane Laura. And a lot of people here, they're heeding the warnings, they're boarding up, but earlier we did talk to a few people that are planning to stay, and right before we got to this live shot location, we did see some people putting some more boards on windows, and some were even spray painting messages. Live in Lake Charles, Chris Holton, KTC TV3.
Reality. Yeah, the reality of what we deal with. We saw that a lot after Rita and Katrina, people spray painting where they were going and phone numbers and that kind of thing. So when folks come looking, they know where to find them.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the other curfews and evacuation orders that are in effect across Acadiana. Everybody, as soon as this stuff comes in, we have a whole team here at KATC really working to make sure they're up to date on web and social, so you can find that over at katc.com/curfews. Starting tonight at Area Parish, 9 o'clock until 6 a.m. That one happening until further notice. Then in St. Martin Parish, moving on there Wednesday, tonight, and tomorrow, 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then also into Friday. We could still be seeing the effects of Hurricane Laura into Friday. There are curfews planned for Acadia Parish as well, just really all across Acadiana, Marcel.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the curfews are in some areas have days, and others say until further notice. It's just best to stay where you are. We heard the state trooper Tom Stockton mention that going out and looking after it's over is not suggested. We know everyone wants to see. That's what we're here for. You will see it in the days to come. Many of us will live through it in the days to come. So if you can stay put for as long as you can, do so. If you need help, 911 is your best option, even though we know emergency responders and law enforcement officials will have to hunker down just like the rest of us at the height of this storm. But as soon as things alleviate just a little bit and get a little easier, they will be out to give any aid that is necessary.
And for those people who are staying in areas where they have been asked to leave, the warning is they will not be able to help you once it gets so bad. Look at this storm. I mean, it is approaching a Cat 5 storm right now. The message we heard from Vermilion Parish Sheriff Mike Gouvion, really grim, but that's the reality of what we heard down there. Is they're saying, write your name, write your next of kin, on a piece of paper, put it in a Ziploc bag, and put it in your pocket. That's how desperate this situation is right now. So if you are in one of these areas where officials have asked you to get out, it's for your own safety, but it's also for the safety of first responders, because they're not going to be able to get to you. And chances are, even when the storm passes, conditions are still going to be bad. There's going to be flooding. It's just going to be a challenge. You're creating a challenge for the system. So that advice really needs to be followed. And here we are, just hitting 7 o'clock, the top of the hour. There is still a little window of opportunity to do so safely.
Yeah, that window is getting smaller and smaller as the hours go by. So if you are planning to, now is the time to do so. You know, with this storm, we have a measuring stick, so to speak, in not that far distant past with Hurricane Rita in this area, and we know what people dealt with during and after that storm. And so if you had issues, you flooded, and you dealt with difficulty, and you couldn't get out, and there were days before you got power, and those kinds of things, you really need to take into consideration. I know we sound like broken records a little bit, but it's just that important that if you have the opportunity, there's a very small window left for you to go ahead, pick up what you can, and move to safer ground. That is, like Jim said, facing a Category 5 storm that's going to change history here in South Louisiana.
Let's check how the storm is already having an impact across the state as well. A mandatory evacuation order is in effect for Terrible Parish, which is beginning to feel the effects of the hurricane. The streets already beginning to flood in what we assume are low-lying areas there. Deputies are patrolling the roads to prevent people from driving through those floodwaters.
And we've seen Terrible Parish be impacted by severe storms before, and there's no exceptions with Laura. Floodwaters are high at the floodgate. Mandatory evacuation in effect for the village. As early as 9 o'clock this morning, water levels at the floodgate had risen by 4 feet. That was as of 9 o'clock this morning, with storm surge in the area already starting to cover parts of Highway 56.
And first responders in Florida are making their way to Louisiana to help out in the relief in the aftermath of Hurricane Laura.
Yeah, that's one of those things we know about our area and their area.
Florida Emergency Operations Center for PPE. First responders are now on the way to help recovery efforts from Hurricane Laura.
And we're doing what Louisiana has done for us in the past. We're deploying out our urban search and rescue task force 4 out of Central Florida.
The task force will spend 2 weeks in the area, starting with Baton Rouge. In tow, all-terrain vehicles, boats, even portable showers.
For that aspect, and any aspect that we may have to, if it's high in the rescue, water rescue, collapsed buildings, we have the capabilities to be able to provide that. So whatever mission comes our way, we should be able to handle it.
Tasks include going door to door 4 times in a row.
People don't want to leave their stuff. So you know what? We will then go again, and they go again, and go a final time, 4 times, on 4 separate days to go out and ensure that those individuals are truly in a safe place.
And even just taking up everyday tasks.
And those assisted fire stations, that fire stations still have families that live and breathe inside those. They got to take care of their own homes.
Ultimately, we want to make sure that everybody that may have been in harm's way is accounted for, and answers are given for any loved ones that may have loved ones that are missing.
But Florida is still feeling the impacts of Hurricane Michael from 2018. This mission is hitting close to home for the state's CFO, Jimmy Petronas.
Yeah, and it's easy for me to get emotional because when Hurricane Michael hit, we had every task force in the state of Florida deployed to Northwest Florida. In addition, Louisiana sent over 200 of their own to go door to door and assist with the recovery and life-saving essential services.
Well, that's just what we do. Those of us who live along the Gulf, we know what happens in times like this, and they help us, we help them. That speaks volumes about not only utility companies and emergency responders, but people in neighboring states take care of each other as well.
And also leaving their families, getting over here to help us out. It's really remarkable when times like this happen. You can always count on your neighbors. I think there's a message there. Let's head back out live to Lake Charles, everybody. We have this live shot from a camera that's well above the I-10 bridge. Marcel, this is a bridge I wouldn't want to drive on when there's a breeze.
Yeah, there's some studies and efforts being done to help with the structure of that bridge and the security of that bridge on an everyday basis. But in the midst of this storm, we're not sure what those emergency responders are doing there. We're not sure if this is in response to the storm or if we just don't know at this point. We are working. Preparing, right, exactly. It could be in preparation of a shutdown. We don't know that. That's not confirmed yet. That's this point, we are working to find out what that is about, because we are looking at the bridge there in Lake Charles. Our Chris Welty is in that area as well, keeping an eye on things there. Lake Charles, an area that's expected to be heavily impacted in what's being called an unsurvivable storm.
And just look at the water. You can see some ripples in the water. I believe that.
I mean, even the camera moving.
The camera quality, but I would imagine it is ripples in the water just from the winds that are starting to pick up there in Calhoun Parish. And like you said, the camera alone just shaking. This is a bridge. It is intimidating when you drive over it, you drive up to it, just the peak of it. But yeah, on a breezy day, it's not very comfortable driving over it. When you have a storm as strong as Hurricane Laura approaching.
Yeah. And as soon as we know what those emergency responders are about, we will, of course, let you know. We talked to state police earlier. At this point, I-10 is still open. That will probably change, but at this moment in time, I-10 is still open. We did hear that from state police a little earlier. We're updating scripts and getting new information, and people talking to us in our ears. So sorry, we were both listening in that moment.
We're both listening. That's right.
What's in your ear? I do have gusts to 48 at Vermilion Bay and Livermore Point, 48 mile-an-hour gusts. So there's your tropical storm force winds.
Those are current.
That's there you are, right far away camera there. That's at Kurt and Livermore Point, 48 mile-an-hour winds. Freshwater City, which is just south of Intracoastal City, gusts 42. And also in Freshwater City, I was just looking at the tidal gauge there, and the tidal gauge just spiked 7 feet above tide prediction level. Wow. And what is really scary is that high tide here is not coming until later on tonight, 2 o'clock in the morning, just about when the highest surge is going to come in. So we're already seeing flood water inundating the areas such as Intracoastal City, likely Freshwater City, and more than likely Livermore Point. I'm going to see if I can get some information specifically on Livermore Point coming up here in a little bit. But this storm, as you see on the graphic, down to 940 millibars. I'm looking at the Hurricane Hunter, and it is just about going to pass through the storm again. In fact, let me throw this up on. What is directing? Why don't you just take the Doppler computer? Because this will show you where the airplane is. And this was the last pass through here. This is kind of what had Bradley and I kind of gasping when we were looking at these extrapolated surface pressures. And again, the windup was the National Hurricane Center went with 940 millibars. And this is essentially a hurricane reconnaissance. You search a hurricane reconnaissance KML, get a Google Earth, and you can see the Hurricane Hunter flying through the storm. So this Hurricane Hunter is actually a NOAA plane, came out of Tampa. Looks like they checked out something down here. This may have been another search and rescue. We had that with Chris Noble not too long ago. So interesting that it did divert up through by Salt Point here. And I'll see if I can find out about that through my Twitter feed. But then the plane flies through this area. This is where they figured the center to be. You can see where the winds are light. This is right in the center of the storm. And we take maybe this one observation point here, and then we get a slew of data that shows us the pressure and everything that's going on here. Flight level, dew points, sea surface temperature, just a whole lot of information. So this is what I'm looking at right now while I'm sitting here in the weather lab. I'm just kind of waiting for this plane to eventually come back and crisscross through the center, which is probably over here now. You see how they're flying, and they're going to go west, and they essentially fly what's called delta patterns, and this is a delta pattern, like a triangle right here. They're going to fly north like this, then they're going to come this way, then they're going to come this way, and it's going to look like a daisy or a flower petal after all is said and done. But nonetheless, let's get back to the graphic system. I can just kind of pump it back, and the main story is we've been watching this, and I commented to Bradley, and you look at the latitude-longitude lines. This is moving not only north-northwest, but it almost looks like in the this is every 5 minutes a new image. So it could be part of a wobble. but it is looking like it's gaining due north latitude here, and the eye will probably cross this latitude line. Let me just put this here so I can just illustrate it as well. But this is making a beeline. Just follow this up to the north. It's probably going to get very close to east of Cameron, which may save Cameron from maybe a super bad storm surge. But look at that, Grand Chenier right now. This is going to make landfall somewhere between Grand Chenier and Cameron based on what we're seeing here. Let's just get over to the radar data, and we'll take a real close look at that as well. Boy, that is a foreboding looking eye there, and you get a little parallax issue here. Kind of shift this so we're looking directly down into it. And you can see it's been moving almost more of a northerly than even a north-northwesterly direction. So that's not for us to call. It could be just a short-term wobble, but bringing the radar up, and we kind of see the same thing here, where it's pretty much gaining latitude more than it's gaining any western longitude. And we look, maybe it's starting to wobble. And maybe we're beginning to see what's that could be the beginning of an eyewall replacement cycle. This essentially means this eyewall that we're seeing on here will begin to collapse, and we'll start to see maybe a new eyewall form out a little bit further out. But seeing it wobble a little bit, but also what's going on, as soon as these big outer rain bands start interacting with land, that introduces friction into the storm, and it's like little teeny tiny speed bumps that the storm is starting to feel. So maybe we're going to max out at 150, but with that pressure dropping, we'll see what the next recon flight looks like. We'll keep an eye on the look of the center of this storm. Looking not quite as circular as it did earlier on this loop. This is a 4-hour loop right here, so we'll watch that. But we do notice